Good morning, El Camino. What a privilege, what an honor it is for me to be able to bring the word to you guys again, the second time in a row. I'm surprised they let me back. No, but today I wanted to start things off for you all this morning with a bit of a story about how I met Godzilla. I have your attention, don't I? No, when I was between my freshman and sophomore years of college, I was working at a Target in order to make some extra money for my tuition, and I was working in the checkout line as the cashier in Rosemont, at the Target out in Rosemont, which is a suburb of Chicago that is known for its convention center, right? The Rosemont Convention Center is a big deal. They hold conventions all year round in that thing, and while I was working there over the summer, they had a comic book / like vintage movie convention that was happening. And so that week, the amount of Batmans that came through my aisle, my little cashier aisle, was higher than most weeks. There were all sorts of people in costume, dressed up as movie characters, as comic characters, and it was really fun to see all the cool costumes that people had. But partway through the week, there was this unassuming sort of Japanese guy who walked in through my line, and I started checking him out. And as, your average cashier does, I begin to make some small talk. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? How's your day going? You got any good plans for the weekend? And he looks at me, and he kind of turns to the guy who's standing next to him, and he says, I'm sorry, I don't speak English. And the translator kind of jumped in from that point. He says, yeah, my friend here is from out of town, and he's coming to town for the convention. And so, again, as I'm checking out his stuff, I continue doing small talk, and I say, hey, that's so cool. Are you in town to just watch the convention, to be at the convention, or are you here as a part of the convention? And he said, well, actually, he's here as a part of the convention. In those old 1960s, super cheesy Godzilla movies where there's this rubber suit Godzilla breaking down the houses of Tokyo, that's the guy who is in the rubber Godzilla suit. And so I was like, oh my goodness, I love your movies. And we had this great little back and forth. We had a little conversation through the translator there at the Target. And I told him how much I loved the movies, and he said he was so thankful for me saying that. So it was this fun little interaction. I love telling that story about when I met Godzilla. That's my celebrity story. We all have a celebrity story, don't we? Right? A story of meeting somebody who's famous. And I love celebrity stories because I love seeing how people react to celebrities. Whether they're really excited to meet this person who is famous through film or through writing, or whether they're super nervous, or whether they have a specific conversation that they want to have or a question that they want to ask that famous person. I love celebrity stories. And so I'm really excited today to be able to talk about Luke chapter 19. There's a celebrity story in the Bible. Luke chapter 19. We're going to read about Zacchaeus, a man who was willing to do just about anything to meet his celebrity, right? To meet Jesus and talk to Jesus. And so if you'll turn with me to Luke chapter 19, we're going to start in verse 1. We're going to go all the way down to the end of 10. I'm just going to be reading the first 4 verses to start with. But our text today is Luke 19, 1 through 10. He, being Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through. And there was a man named Zacchaeus who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich, and he was trying to see who Jesus was, but he was not able to because of the crowd, since he was a short man. So running ahead, he climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus, since he was about to pass that way. So our story today starts with Jesus passing through the city of Jericho. And this would have been a fairly normal thing to do. Jericho was a normal stopping off point as you were traveling from the north of Israel to the south of Israel, where Jerusalem was, and that's where Jesus was heading. Jericho was located along this north-south highway in Israel. And so most people, as they were traveling to Jerusalem from the north, would have stopped in Jericho. It was a big-time trade city. Not only did it have this north-south route that ran through it, the east-west route also ran through it. And so most of the trade that was happening from the east of Israel passed over the Jordan and entered in through Jericho into the rest of Israel. And so it was this big, bustling trade city. The streets would have been full, the markets would have been big, and there were tradesmen everywhere. Not only that, it was also an oasis city in what was otherwise a deserty area. It was warm and lush because there were these freshwater springs that people could use to water their gardens and water the trees. It was this beautiful, lush city of trade. And as Jesus walks in through the city, the landscape would have changed from the mountainous desert terrain to be more forgiving, to where he was walking underneath the shade of the palms and the sycamores as he walked into the city of Jericho. And as he started coming towards Jericho, the news of his arrival spread like wildfire through the city. He had been doing miracles. In fact, in the chapter exactly previous to this, the section immediately preceding the story, Jesus heals a blind man right outside the city. And so news of his arrival was spreading everywhere. People were talking about this preacher, this rabbi who was coming through the city, who preached with authority that none of the other teachers had. This rabbi, this teacher who came with power from God, power to heal the blind and make the lame to walk and heal the infirm. And he was coming here to Jericho. And one of the people who hears about it is a man named Zacchaeus. And we read that Zacchaeus is a tax collector. Now, tax collectors were not very well liked in Judea at that time. Let's be honest, tax collectors aren't very well liked even here in America. But they were especially hated in Judea because they were working for the Roman government. You see, the Romans, they hired out local Jewish men to collect their taxes for them, and then they would get the taxes from that area from the tax collectors that they had installed. And so for the tax collectors to side with the Roman government and collect taxes for them, that was like treason to the rest of the Jewish community. It was like saying, hey, I have sided with Rome, I have stabbed my fellow Jewish community members in the back, and I'm now profiteering off of their hardship. Because Rome was a brutal and violent government, and to side with them was like selling out your country. Tax collectors were sellouts in the mind of the community. They were traitors and they were profiteers. Not only that, but the Roman tax system had a lot of room for corruption. It was easy for tax collectors to overcharge people and take the extra money for themselves. The tax rate might be 10%, but they would charge you 15% and pocket the extra and skim off the top. And so not only were they traitors, not only were they sellouts, they were thieves as well. And so here we have Zacchaeus, who's not just a tax collector, he is the chief tax collector. Tax collecting is his life, and he has made a killing off of it. Right? He has been willing to pursue wealth and comfort to the point where he was willing to alienate himself from the rest of the community in order to get this wealth and comfort for himself. He's willing to steal from his friends and the people around him. And yet, after pursuing wealth for all this time, Zacchaeus was still left empty. There was something more. He wanted something more to life. Hearing about this Jesus guy, this preacher who spoke with power, maybe he had the answer. Maybe Jesus had the answers for Zacchaeus. And so he said, you know what, I'm going to see this Jesus. I'm going to hear what he has to say. I'm going to find out what Jesus is all about. I'm going to catch him as he walks through the city and listen to what he has to say. And so he heads to the gate. He checks out that main road that goes through the city of Jericho because he was going to catch a glimpse of Jesus. But apparently, the rest of Jericho had the same idea because they were all there, right? The city was crowded. They were all gathered around Jesus, and the crowd was immense and full. And everybody in the city wanted to see this amazing preacher who could do miracles. They wanted to see Jesus. They wanted to bring their infirm to him. They wanted to hear him speak. And so the crowd was impenetrable. And Zacchaeus, being a short guy, he was not able to look over the crowd. He could not see over the crowd to look at Jesus, to find out what Jesus was saying. And so I imagine he would have probably been ducking in, maybe trying to use his height as an advantage, right? Sneak through the crowd, do the old snake and bob and weave. But the crowd was so dense that even after trying that, he quickly realized he was not getting anywhere with this. And so he quickly heads back out and he begins to reconsider his options. Starts thinking of a plan B. Zacchaeus didn't get to where he was as the chief tax collector by letting any old obstacle stand in his way. No, he was going to find a way to see Jesus. And so Zacchaeus, thinking about how is he going to get to Jesus, was looking around, and maybe he saw some kids playing in the trees that dotted the road, climbing and laughing, hanging off of the tree branches. And an idea came to him. If he could just get ahead of the crowd along that main road that Jesus was walking down and get into one of those trees, he could use the vantage point to see and hear Jesus speak. And Jesus would just come directly to him. And so Zacchaeus, in all of his fancy robes as the chief tax collector and the fancy rings, he gets his robes up, bundles them up together, and hikes it up and runs down the street to get ahead of the crowd. And he must have looked pretty silly doing it. It's not easy running around in a robe. And so one of the things people used to do is they used to grab their robes, pull it up a little bit, give a little bit of extra room for their legs, and book it down the street. And so here we have this fancy man holding his robes up, running down the street at a breakneck speed, and it must have looked pretty ridiculous. You see, there's a reason why most wealthy Jewish men didn't run places. They walked. People of status walked. They didn't run. But Zacchaeus, he didn't care what people thought. He was going to see Jesus. And so he ran down the street, and then he gets to the foot of the sycamore tree, and he scrambles up into that sycamore tree, all dignity left behind. Because let me tell you, there is no graceful way to climb up a tree in a robe, especially a fancy one. And so here he is, scrambling up this tree in his robe, huffing and puffing, panting, flush in the face, sweat on his brow, and he is in his tree, and he doesn't care, man. He doesn't care what people think. He doesn't care about the jeers. He is here to see Jesus, and nothing is going to stop him. So he sits in this tree, and he waits for Jesus to come by, and sure enough, the crowd starts amassing and passing underneath him, and there's Jesus, teaching and healing. And he looks down into the crowd, and he looks at Jesus, and the most amazing thing happens. Jesus looks back at him, and they lock eyes. In verse 5, we read, "When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, 'Zacchaeus, hurry, come down, because today it is necessary for me to stay at your house.' So he quickly came down and welcomed him joyfully, and all who saw it began to complain, saying, 'He's gone to stay with a sinful man.'" So Zacchaeus is sitting up in this tree. He looks down. Jesus looks back up at him. And in Jesus' face, there's a sense of recognition. And he smiles and waves up at Zacchaeus and says, "Zacchaeus, hurry up and come down, man. Today I am going to be visiting you at your house. It is important that I stay at your house today. It is imperative. It is necessary. I've got to do this. I want to spend the evening hanging out with you, talking with you, having dinner with you, having relationship with you, Zacchaeus." And Zacchaeus, I can't imagine what's going through his mind, right? Because here's this guy he's never met, right? This Jesus, this famous preacher who is acting with miracles and preaching with authority. He looks up, he recognizes Zacchaeus and calls him out by name and says, "Come, hang out with me. Let me stay at your house tonight." Here is Jesus who has seen him, who knows him, who recognizes him, and who wants to spend time with him. A tax collector, the chief tax collector of all people. And so Zacchaeus, filled with joy at being seen and known, scrambles out of that tree and rushes over to Jesus. And the crowd goes quiet, and the mumbles begin to happen. He's a sinner, though. Doesn't Jesus know what kind of a man Zacchaeus is? Doesn't Jesus know that he's a tax collector, a traitor, a sellout? Doesn't Jesus know that this man is a thief, a corrupt official? Doesn't he know how evil and wicked Zacchaeus is? Doesn't he know that Zacchaeus is a sinner? Somebody ought to tell Jesus. Somebody ought to let him know. He wouldn't be staying with Zacchaeus if he knew everything there was to know about Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is a sinner. But Zacchaeus, he's out there with the Lord. He's talking to the Lord. He is having conversation with the Lord. They're walking to their house together. And Zacchaeus is listening. He's hearing what Jesus has to say. And as he listens to what Jesus has to say, his life, like something is touched in him. And something stirs in him. And he realizes that that relationship with this man, this is all I need, right? This man holds the key to what I'm looking for. And so we read Zacchaeus' response in verse 8. It says, Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, I'll give half of my possessions to the poor. Lord, and if I have extorted anything from anyone, I'll pay back 4 times as much. Zacchaeus, he looks at Jesus and he says, look, Lord, I've messed up. I've blown it, right? Like, I have been stealing from this community. I've been hoarding this money. I've been taking advantage of the people who live here. And I know that I've messed up. I know I've done wrong. But I want to give back. I want to make it right. I want to give back to this community that I've been taking from. And so I want to give away half of my possessions. Half of everything I own. Boom, right back to the poor. Not only that, Lord, if there is anybody that I've extorted, anybody I've stolen money from, I want to pay that money back, and I don't want to just pay back what I took from them. I'm going to pay back 4-fold what I took from them. 4 times as much. If I took $5, I'm giving them 20. Because you know what, Jesus? I've been seeking wealth and comfort my whole life, and it's never satisfied me the way you have. And if this is the price of following you, I am happy to pay it. I'm all in, Jesus. I am all in. Whatever you say, whatever you want, I'm there. And Jesus looks at him with this smile and this happiness and joy in his eye. And he says, we read in verse 9, he says, today salvation has come to this house, Jesus told him, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save the lost. He looks at Zacchaeus and he says, so today salvation has come to this house. Because of your faith, Zacchaeus, because of your love for me, you have been saved. Welcome to the kingdom. And then, as if to turn to the crowd that has been mumbling this whole time, he says, let me just make sure I got it right. He says, he too is a son, a true son of Abraham, right? He looks to the crowd, he says, this man is a true son of Abraham, pointing at Zacchaeus. As if to say, look, you call him a sinner, you call him unworthy, you call him a sellout and a traitor, but I look at Zacchaeus and I see a man of faith, somebody who is willing to give it all, somebody who shares the same faith as Abraham, that same faith that Abraham displayed when he left his hometown and wandered out into the desert with nothing but the word of the Lord to guide him. That same faith, boom, Zacchaeus has got it. That same faith that Abraham had, when he stood over his son Isaac with a knife in his hand on Mount Moriah, ready to sacrifice him for the Lord, Zacchaeus has the same faith. You call him a sinner, I call him a true son of Abraham, because this man has the faith of Abraham. He is like his father Abraham. He looks, he says, because I have come to seek and save the lost. I've come for the people who are searching, who don't have it all together, who are broken and lost, and who need a Savior. I've come to seek and to save those people. And if you're going to keep them out, then you're missing the whole point of who I am and what I came to do. So as we leave Zacchaeus and Jesus and we wrap this story up and leave them to party and celebrate Zacchaeus' entry into the kingdom of heaven, I want to ask you guys a question. Do you share Jesus' passion and love for the lost? The same passion and love that's reflected in the Great Commission, right? Make disciples of all nations. I love the way Jesus sees Zacchaeus, recognizes him, and loves him, and then invites him into relationship. Are we doing that? Are we intentionally going out looking for people, seeing the people around us, looking for opportunities to reach out in love to those who are seeking the Lord? Are we looking for opportunities to be there when their car breaks down? Boom, perfect opportunity. Show up, pick them up, get them back to work. When something happens and they need somebody to grieve with, are we there? That's an opportunity. Are we looking for those opportunities? Are we looking for those opportunities to celebrate and extend the love of God in celebration when your friend, your coworker, your family member experiences a promotion? Right? There's so many ways to extend the love of Christ and to be there for people in their lives if we just look for them. Are we looking for opportunities to share the love of Jesus? And are we there to invite them into relationship and invite them into our community, the way Jesus was quick to invite Zacchaeus into relationship and community? And not just with people who are like us. I think that's the most challenging part for me. It's easy, right? It's easy to do that with people who are like us, who share our values, who share our ideology, who think the same way we do, who dress the same way we do, who are the same as us, right? It's easy to do that. But with the people who are different from us, right? The people who look different, who've had different life experiences, the people who think differently and have different ideologies, the people who, heaven forbid, are on the other side of the political aisle from you. Are we willing to reach out and extend that hand of relationship and love to other people? But maybe today, you identify more with Zacchaeus. You've been searching. You've been trying to find satisfaction and fulfillment in life. Whether it be like Zacchaeus through wealth, or maybe through relationships, maybe it's through family. And you've been seeking fulfillment, and you just come up empty. Jesus sees you today. Just like Zacchaeus, he sees you and he knows you. And whether you're really going through hurt and brokenness right now and you're looking for somebody to save you, or whether things are going great and you're just curiously come to check out what this Jesus guy has to say, sort of like Zacchaeus. Let me tell you, Jesus is here. He sees you. He's looking at you. He loves you so much, and he's extending out his hand in invitation. Come and have relationship with me. Find satisfaction, find peace and fulfillment in me. Jesus loves you, and he's inviting you to have relationship with him. Don't let that opportunity pass you by. So as we play this last song, take a moment to think about the invitation that Christ has extended. And if that's something you want to look into, if you want to know more about what a relationship with Jesus looks like, please, I'm going to be up here during the songs. Come and talk to me. Come and talk to any of us. Talk to Pastor Haas or Pastor Bruce or anybody who is up here. We'd be happy to talk to you about that. Thank you.